Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Transgender Show. I'm your host, Emily. I hope you all are having a great night after watching Jay's show. Very fun. I love having them on the network. So much energy, so much beauty. Tonight, I'm very excited to welcome to the show Blossom Brown. Coach Blossom C. Brown is an activist, actress, astrologer, tarot reader, producer, entrepreneur, spiritual life coach, and spiritual life coach. She got her degree in public health education from Mississippi University for Women, in which she became the first Black trans woman to get her degree from the university. She rose to notoriety when she appeared on season 1 of Caitlyn Jenner's docu-series I Am Cait, and for her appearance on season 13 of The Ellen Show. She also disrupted the CNN LGBTQ Townhall during Don Lemon's segment to protest the erasure of Black Transwomen. She currently is the subject of the award-winning documentary One Life to Blossom. Everybody, welcome to the show, Blossom. Hi, love.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm very excited to have you on and to be talking about all the amazing things that you've been up to, and the interesting stuff about the fact that you're a tarot reader and kind of you did mention to me earlier, spiritualist, right?
Yes.
Yes. Wonderful. So, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on and being willing to share your story.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Let's go ahead and jump right in with a couple quick things. Just so everybody knows everything, I've got your pronouns there, she, her, next to your name. But how do you identify? Uh-oh, did you freeze on me?
Yeah, I think I lost you a little bit, love.
Okay. I was asking how you identify.
Black trans woman. Yeah, I'm a trans woman.
Then my favorite question to start with as we get into your actual story, how did you choose your name?
So believe it or not, there was a TV show in the 90s called Blossom. And it was one of my favorite shows as a kid. With Blossom, Six L'Amour, Joey Lawrence, like that was like my Saturday morning. And I fell in love with that name Blossom because originally I think I had chose the name Vanessa, spelled Vynessa, but all of a sudden I had to really think about like where I've come from, how far I've come, and how I blossomed. And so Blossom was it. And I just stayed with it and here I am.
That's
Because
awesome.
people think that I was named after the Powerpuff Girls, and that's not true.
Okay.
That Blossom I was not named after. I was already Blossom before they came out. I just wanted to let y'all know that.
Give you credit for where you are in the timeline. Yes. Well, you named yourself after someone who is a physicist, a brain, not a brain. I keep wanting to say brain surgeon, but
Yeah,
Okay.
she's a scientist or something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Studying, specializing in the study of the brain. So yeah, good company to be in there for that name. So when did you first realize that you were trans? When did that term specifically apply to you?
Yeah, I knew there was something about me as a kid that was different, but I didn't know any term and other words. But I just knew I was a girl. I would paint my fingernails. I would color them with crayons, color my toenails with crayons, hide them from my parents. Some of the oldest are 4, and it wasn't really allowed in our household.
Oh, wait.
But I knew at a very young age that I felt like a girl.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't really until I was about 20 that I had made that self discovery. Oh my God, I'm trans. I think I know what it is now. Because, growing up, people just think that, oh, you're gay, oh, you're going through a phase. And coming from the deep South, Mississippi,
Mm-hmm.
it was a lot of that down there. So I just knew at a young age, but then at the age of 20, I decided to take that leap of faith and secretly start transitioning.
And how did you come to terms with that identity and really begin to accept that?
What was that, love? I'm sorry.
I said, how did you
There's
come to
like a
terms? Oh, how did you come to terms with the transgender identity and learn to accept that about yourself and move forward with it positively?
it was a struggle. And I think it's still a struggle because I don't think you ever really stop that struggle. I think the struggle evolves a little bit because you're always redefining yourself and you're always redefining who you are. And with my transness, first of all, being Black is one thing, but then also being trans is a whole different topic.
Yeah.
But those things intersect in my life. So my experience has been very nuanced and it's very, very interesting. Because there are some spaces I go in my Blackness that I know my transness is not accepted. And I feel like sometimes I'm either having to fight for my Blackness or fight for my transness. It's like I can't have those two things conjoined together in some spaces. And it's been very frustrating for me because it's like, as trans folks, it's like, we get to this point of acceptance within ourselves, but we also look for the validation of others around us because we
Yeah.
want that safety. And I'm a person that's heavy on safety. So, you know, um, yeah, it's very interesting. I feel like I'm still going through that, but I have accepted myself as being trans. I have, but even within these last couple of years, I'm still like trying to wrap my brain around like why did I get to that point? Like, is there more to me?
Mhm.
Right? Am I much more of an expansion of just more than my gender identity? Because my gender identity is very, very important because it's really important for me to show up in my authentic self the way I am, because people need to see that we exist. But I feel like I'm still expanding, and it's really interesting.
Mhm. You mentioned finding safety, finding, just finding that safety and that balance of the intersection of those two identities. Where are some of the places that you found, or where were some of the early places you found where you did feel safe?
Yeah, so I joined a gay family or drag family. It was the Dupree family back in Jackson, Mississippi. Shout out to all of them. I had a gay mom. My gay mom actually just passed away last year. She was the very first one to accept me. She was just like, because I was like the geeky child, like, that very, very happy, geeky one that was very different. And, she took me under her wings and introduced me to the gay family. And, within that, I felt like I jumped into survival mode because being in Mississippi, there weren't a lot of opportunities for trans folks like me. And in Mississippi, the trans folks are much more scattered out because you got to think about how rural Mississippi can get. So we were all kind of spread out a little bit. So some of us didn't really know about the other unless you were like in that drag family, like the pageant scene, the drag scene, like anything like that is kind of what brought us all together.
Hmm.
So it was like having to navigate through that. Going through that, I experienced a lot of different things. I used to do sex work. For me, I thought sex work was a means of survival, but at the same time, I was also in school. So trying to get my education, trying to navigate through that because I wanted that security where if I at least go get my education, I can go compete against my cis counterparts for job opportunities. And I wasn't thinking about it from a career standpoint. I was thinking about it more from a survival standpoint because people are not going to hire me because I'm trans. Let's just be 100% real
Hmm.
in Mississippi at the time, because the trans experience is not what it is today. It's gotten a lot better because there are a lot of amazing activists and advocates that are on the ground doing the work there and in the Deep South. But I did it because I needed to survive. I needed to network. I needed to navigate. And so being able to go through sex work, being able to experience the things I experienced, I experienced violence. I had been shot at. I had been robbed. I had my car stolen. It was a very traumatic time, but I had to learn how to struggle. Excuse me, not learn how to struggle. I had to learn how to navigate the struggle, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
I had to learn how to, you know, fool with the Johns, you know what I mean? Because that's how I was gaining that extra money, because I needed that extra money. Being in school, having a job, and, you know, also being in my mom's house at the time. But in my mom's house, she didn't know I had transitioned. So there was just this whole thing of me having to leave the house one way, come home dressed another way. And I did that for years. Um, and I just couldn't take it anymore. But that's really how I navigated early on, having that 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 support of chosen family,
Hmm.
being able to, you know, be able to just really learn the ropes, learn how the streets work. I had to learn how to become street smart, because people would try to play you, people would try to set you up. It was like a thing. So yeah, I had to really navigate through all of that.
Wow. Um, yeah, I can't even imagine what that's like, coming into, I mean, you've already experienced, I mean, I'm assuming at this point you hadn't really experienced life as a trans person because you were still very closeted, but the dangers of your identities, and then go out actually into the place where, we talked on in the pre-interview about the number of Black trans women who are killed, and are represented in that list for Trans Day of Remembrance. And you find yourself in that specific situation that is, just known as the most dangerous. I can't even imagine what that's like to navigate. How did you acquire the skills that you needed to survive in that environment? Did you have like other people to turn to? Were there other trans people you could talk to?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of a few different things. I had to learn it. I had to learn how to survive. I had to learn the tricks. I had to learn the ropes. I had to teach myself that. Because I had my gay mom, yes, and I had like my gay siblings, yes, but it was still what everybody for themselves, basically.
Hmm.
But within that realm. So I had to learn. I had to learn how to dress myself. I had to learn how to do makeup. I had to do all of these things because, honestly, in that world, it felt like competition. You know, you had to go get your body done, right? There were certain rules and stipulations that you had to kind of follow in the game, and you needed that support. And so I had to learn that by myself. But then I also had the support of like my gay sisters, gay brothers, gay siblings. And, they definitely welcomed me in, and I learned a lot from them. I learned how to do sex work properly. I learned how to, because I was really like that geeky kid that really just didn't know anything.
Yeah.
But I had to really just take their advice. And my gay grandmama, she's still alive. I love her to death. She's amazing. She's a performer. I think she's retired. No, I'm sorry, she didn't retire. But my grandma Latanya was just such an angel to me. And she was tough. But she taught me a lot. And during that time in my life, I was single. I was trying to figure out who I was. I was rebellious against like my own family, just wanted to get out, move away. And, I felt like that part of my life was so life changing. Because yes, I was closeted, but then also at the same time, two people know I was out. So it was this weird thing in my family where my actual mom knew about me and my transition, and she knew I was closeted. She knew I wouldn't bring it around her.
Oh, okay.
Like you could check my social media. Like you could check my social media and I would be like this who I was. But like my mom didn't follow me on social media, but she knew because people came back and told her about what was going on with me. And I'm quite sure my mom knew about the sex work and everything like that because parents know. Parents know. And I would say our relationship growing up was very it had many rough patches, but now she's one of my biggest supporters. But I felt like we needed to go through that to get to where we are today. And so I'm thankful for those times. And this is just like kind of like where I am today. Like, you have to find that support amongst people that you trust. And that's so hard because you can't trust everybody.
Yeah.
Because in this game, people can be in it for themselves. And I cannot tell you how many times back then I let people around me that I should not have, because I thought everybody was so cool and wanted to show me the ropes.
Hmm.
But some of those girls would want to set you up for failure. I got maced in the face by another girl because she was jealous that a guy wanted to talk to me, somebody I wasn't even interested in. I got into a fist fight with one of the girls, like in the back of the club, Friday, Saturday nights, on the beat, running in heels, running from the police, because the police used to be all down there. You know, that was such a crazy time. It really was. Like, I remember when one of the girls stole my car and it almost caught on fire. My mom had to come get me. It was like a whole thing. And so, I was living that wild life for
Yeah.
quite some time because I was taught that that was the only way to navigate.
Yeah, so you're going through this and you're diving into a lot and you're learning a lot and the experiences you've gone through were just crazy at that point. But it sounded like sort of at that time there was still sort of a closeted aspect to your identity. Was this the final thing that kind of broke it for you and gave you the confidence in who you were as Blossom to finally live full time? I feel like you lost that one.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna tell you about the delay. I'm sorry. It's a
Oh,
delay, like your mouth and the words are a little slow. So I was watching your your mouth.
well,
Yeah,
let's.
no. Thank you. Thank you for that question, love. Yes. To answer your question, yes. Absolutely. I had to have that moment with myself one day alone outside because I'm a nature girl. I love nature. And I had to ask myself, do I really want to spend the rest of my life, the next 60, 70 years, right?
Mhm.
Trying to figure out who I want to be. Am I going to be able to live into my truth? Like, I cannot keep leaving the house dressed as one way, having to come home another way. And then I was in college too when all of this was happening. And so I had to make that conscious decision to move out of my mom's house and start living my truth for who I was. Now, the way my mom found out was I got hurt at work. One day I was at work. Whenever it would rain, our store would flood because our store was below sea level.
Okay.
So it was easy to flood. And what happened was it rained so bad. We were going through a bad thunderstorm and the water just rushed in. The water actually swept me off my feet and I ended up hitting my head on the naked floor and I was knocked unconscious.
Oh no.
Luckily, the hospital was literally right across the street from where I worked. So they ended up having to call an ambulance and send me over there. Well, they had my colleagues jailbroke my phone and they told my mom about the situation. My mom actually told them that she didn't have a child named Blossom
Yeah.
because she didn't know that was the name that I was going by at the time. But she ended up coming on anyway. Because I think, you know what I mean? Like, she ended up coming on anyway. Because I hadn't revealed to her at the time about my transition. And it was that moment in the hospital room with her and my stepdad that I actually confessed to my transition. And she actually took it very well. Like, it wasn't like this crazy thing. It was one of those situations where it felt like, now you finally tell me. And we actually began getting a lot closer then, because even as a kid, like we would be the ones to clash. And it's because we were so much alike. I'm the oldest out of four, and I'm probably the most like her. Ironically, I'm a tarot reader. She was actually a professional tarot reader before me. So
Hmm.
when she sees me doing it just makes her so happy because it reminds me of her. It reminds her of me, excuse me, is what I'm trying to say. But in that moment, that's when we began to get close. Like, she came over, she saw my new apartment. She helped me. Like, that's when our relationship began to heal. And then the birth of my firstborn niece, which came in like 2012, she just turned 10 last week. um, actually even healed our family even more, because it was always this thing of sibling rivalry in our family. Like there's four of us, me and the youngest sister on one side, and then my brother and my other sister on the other side. Like it was just this. It's always been like this sibling rivalry. We're so cool now; it's not even funny, which is so great that the relationship in our family has just really, really healed. But that was my moment then. I knew that I could not live anymore in the closet. And the reason why I lived in the closet was literally for my safety. I was afraid my mom was going to kick me out on the street,
Mm.
and she probably would have lost me to those streets. The violence that trans folks experience was insane.
Yeah.
It was insane. But it was one of those weird things where, although I was going into the streets, I kind of had my head on my shoulders a little bit. But it was still pretty hard and interesting to like navigate, because I was going to work and I wasn't being able to dress as myself.
Yeah.
I wasn't. But luckily, when I think my sophomore year of college, things changed. I showed up. Well, I came to work like this. I wasn't on the schedule or anything. And my boss told me at the time, "You look really, really happy." And I was like, "Yes, I love it. I love it." And so what she ended up doing was she ended up going upstairs and fought for me to be able to come to work like this every day. She told me, "Look, you have to choose one or the other, whichever gender you want to choose, however you want to come, feel like, let's do it." And she, she was a older white lady, redhead. She was so supportive of me up until like the very end when something happened with me and another colleague, and you know um, that ended. But they were very supportive of me. That was the first place of employment that supported me. It was a co-op. And what happened was, when Whole Foods came, they kind of swept them off the map. And so, when you think about these large corporations taking away from those that are actually on the ground farming and growing their own stuff and trying to sell it, you know what I mean? It is what it is. And, that's the reason why, part of the reason why I ended up having to leave that job was because of that mess and all that stuff. But
Hmm.
yeah, I just couldn't take it anymore. I had to live my truth.
And we talked about you coming out to your mom in the hospital, essentially, uh, and and now how it happened with work. What was the rest of your family like? You mentioned you've got those competitive siblings. Was their acceptance? Did they accept you well?
Yeah, they actually did because they knew. Everybody knew.
Okay.
If I had issues, it was more in the extended family,
Mm.
because you have to remember to give people time to kind of catch up. Like when you first transition, people will still misgender you. People will still call you by your old name. And then at the time, I had not legally changed my name, because back then it wasn't a thing in Mississippi. I didn't do that until I moved to California.
Hmm.
But it used to make me cringe, but I had to start demanding my respect. And when I started demanding my respect, people started respecting me better, because it's like, I'm not going to detransition. This is me. You're going to have to accept me. And if you don't want to accept me, that's fine. You need to move out the way. And I was having to tell some of my extended family that you're going to have to move out the way, because I'm going to be able to live my truth. And I looked at it like this: if my mom accepted me, I don't need to be worried about nobody else.
Yeah.
I was more concerned with her accepting me. Like with my dad, I felt like it was a little bit better with my father than it was my mother, and which is like a little unusual, but you know, I just felt like her acceptance is what I needed. And I didn't even care what other people thought, as
Hmm.
long as I had her acceptance.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I love that. Yeah, it's so important to have the supportive family, and especially, we do have a key family member that we look up to, and especially since you sort of followed in your mom's footsteps in so many ways, it makes sense that's the person that you look to the most. Um, let's see. Uh, in the Yeah, we'll get to this question later. This is another side question that came up with during the pre-interview. But let's get to the ethereal question now that I prepped you with in the pre-interview. What does transition mean for you?
What does transition mean for me?
Hmm.
For me, it means alignment. What does alignment look for you? It was something that I had to really ask myself. I needed my outside body to align with how I feel on the inside. And I know that's not everybody's route when it comes to transition. For me, I had to look the part because I was made fun of. You know, I'm 6'3", so I have broad shoulders, um, long neck. People used to call me giraffe growing up, and before I got facial feminization surgery, I looked completely different, and people were so focused on my looks. They were looking at the way I walk, the way I talk, because when I walk on my tiptoes. Like I was going through so much superficial stuff, it was ridiculous.
Hmm.
And I had to learn, self acceptance, self love, because when people around you, because it's one of those weird things where, when it comes to like relationships, back then I would look around and I would see all my friends picking up the tray or getting the tray, and men coming over to them trying to holler, and they weren't coming over to me. And I just used to be like, wow, I'm ugly. Wow, I can't do this. It was a lot of self-sabotaging for myself. And, for me, when I think about that word transition, I had to really look at just the word alignment and what the word alignment meant to me. Like having to transition in a medical way to desensitize the things that were holding me back, the things that were keeping my self esteem down, the things that were keeping my courage down, my strength. And so once I finally, because this took a long time, once I finally started learning, stop listening to my inner critic and listening to the criticism of people around me who I know were not going to be in my life a very long time, I started to really, really zero in and really, really just focus on my truth.
Hmm.
I still think I still struggle with that sometimes because I think as issues come along, things evolve. But honestly, transitioning just means alignment. And when I say alignment, I don't necessarily just mean medically transition, because again, we know some trans folks do want to be on hormones, some don't. Whatever alignment looks like for you, just understanding that alignment itself is not a monolith,
Yeah.
I think is what we have to look at when we talk about transitioning in just that word.
That's a very, very beautiful perspective. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think that, that ties in a little bit to my next question. The next one is, how have your goals shifted as you've moved along your transition? And I think why I like the way those two play together is when you're working on alignment, it's less about a transition journey, and specific steps that you have to make and a list to check off, and more just doing what feels right for you. So, is there anything in that question that resonates with you? Did you kind of shift your goals and your focus as you went along?
I did, because if people had, for the people who has been, who excuse me, for people who have been following me for a while, my journey started off with me wanting to get into nursing school,
Hmm.
in Mississippi, and so what happened was because of my gender identity, I faced discrimination for not being able to get in nursing school. I had the grades, I had the ACT score, I was pretty competitive, um, but that's also what led to the road of me volunteering with the Human Rights Campaign, me being on Ellen and being on Caitlyn Jenner's show, like going that route of actually having to address my discrimination in college. is something that just, you know, it did it because I went on Ellen and everything, and you know, the goal was nursing school, but what happened was more opportunities and doors started to open. And intuitively, I felt like I need to go through these doors. I don't know why. I need to go through them. And I was getting messages from trans folks who were going through other programs, like they were trying to be lawyers, doctors, teachers, and they were experiencing the same thing I was experiencing in college, that discrimination, especially being in the Deep South, because these people were from the Deep South like me. So we had a similar story. And so, you know, after the notoriety, because that's exactly what it was like that public attention, like that, because I grasped that, like literally in my last semester in college, either like the last 2 semesters in college, I ended up on television and stuff, and you know, people started seeing me differently going through college, because when I was in college, they housed me in the men's dorm.
Mm.
They, you know what I mean? Like I experienced a lot of trauma in college alone. Um, like I remember one semester they wanted like a whole dorm meeting, and I walked into a room as I am, and there were just guys everywhere, and there was only one lady because she was our resident director, and I was traumatized. I literally cried and went back to my room. Like
Mm.
it was so visible. And you know, it wasn't until like the last semester where they broke the rules and they let me stay in the girls' dorm. And that was literally only because I had been on television. Now, imagine the typical trans person who can't get that notoriety, that has to navigate that, right?
Yeah.
It's traumatizing. But again, I was doing it for my safety and my security. So, with that being said, the goal of nursing school shifted, and I started focusing more on other things, like, you know, acting is something I had always wanted to do as a kid, acting and producing, writing, stuff like that. I used to pretend like my toys were a soap opera. Like I had always loved that, and I ended up just tapping more into like the spiritual journey even more recently, like about 2 years ago. And I'm rediscovering new goals. It started off in nursing school, but now, you know, being a life coach, being an astrologer, like being able to use cosmic entities to be able to facilitate healing is what I love to do now. And that's quite different. Like nursing over here, life coach, tarot reader, astrologer, and everything else over here.
Mhm.
And I'm kind of glad that I made that shift, because even when we look at society today and we're looking at how nursing and nurses are impacted today with what's going on in the world, it's like, wow, can you imagine if I had actually chose that route? I too would have been burnt out. I too would have been worried about if I'm going to catch COVID and give it to my family, my loved ones, while trying to serve other people. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I commend our nurses each and every day. I commend everyone that's working in that field, that's doing the best to protect us. Thank you so much. You know what I mean? Because that could have been me doing that work as well too. And I'm just grateful that I'm able to have shifted my goals to do something that I feel is more impactful to me. So yes, there is a goal shift, but a lot of it had to happen because of injustice.
Mhm.
Injustice is usually the groundwork. Injustice is usually that initiator for a lot of things. And for me, that injustice of not being able to get into nursing school shifted, because when I was on Caitlyn Jenner's show and Caitlyn did what she did, I had to have that conversation with myself and ask myself, you know, since you got someone who's very famous, who's of a brand, help you to get what you need. It's like any nursing program now that will see me, it will literally only be because I was on Caitlyn's show. They're not going to pay attention to the hard work that I slayed in college. They're
Yeah.
not going to pay attention to the trauma I navigated in college to get to where I am. They're going to look at the notoriety. They're going to look at the fact that I know Caitlyn Jenner. They're going to look more at that. And I had to have that conversation with myself
Hmm.
because I would be doggone if people would have, if I would have been doggone if people thought I didn't work hard for what I had, that I didn't study night after night, that I didn't have to give up my social life to make sure I got the grades that I needed to graduate. Right.
Yeah.
So, I really struggled with that for a while because it's like, oh my God, at the height of all of the attention and the celebrity or whatever, it's like, oh my God, I'm gonna actually have to shift my goals. I'm gonna have to. And so I'm thankful for that role because that role opened up this door to where I am today.
What
You
are some of
following me
those
for
key things that have come from that, have come from that shift, and what you're doing specifically now because of that experience?
yeah, my purpose, my destiny.
Hmm.
Being able to connect with people, being able to connect with our trans, G, and C, and B intersex community. And doing it from a very spiritual way. Like I'm doing it from a way where a lot of people are not doing it. Like they have to go find that kind of stuff from cis folks. And I'm trying to break that. Um, and I'm also having to have that conversation of being expansive because, some of us as trans people, and we really don't, I've noticed that we really don't like to have this conversation. Some of us as trans people, whether like, influencer or whatever, we impact both cis people and trans people. And there are some of us as trans folks that only impact other trans people, and that's fine, right? And so the thing is, it's like I feel like there's this infighting for trans folks who impact both. And I know that I impact both. And so it's like, where do I fit in sometimes? I
Hmm.
always feel like I'm trying to question that, especially within our community.
Yeah.
I always talk about white supremacy kind of throwing those little crumbs to our community, and we're having to fight over those crumbs, and we don't see the full course meal that we deserve because we're taught that we're not worthy of that because we're trans. We are taught that we're inferior because of our gender identity, because of our gender expression. That's what's been thrown at us, which is why we feel like our rights are always being snatched away. Like we can't go into the bathroom that we choose more to be more comfortable with. That we have to fight so hard for recognition. MJ Rodriguez just blew us all away. She just broke new ground, but look at the hard work she had to do. And it doesn't just stop there. You don't just give it to one person and think that it stopped. And I love that MJ is actually saying something about that. You know what I mean? Like things always come harder to our community. But this is also the thing too. I believe that we're the most resilient because we can handle it. We can navigate through it. We've learned how to create survival mechanisms to handle that. It doesn't matter which form of work you do, whether you're in entertainment, whether you are a sex worker, whether you're in the nonprofit sector, whether you're in healthcare, it doesn't matter. We all, as trans people, are in survival mode. It doesn't matter about passing privilege because even if you have passing privilege, you're still in survival mode.
Yeah.
You're trying to navigate heterosis normativity, right?
Yeah.
So we all are in this whole matrix of being able to survive. And, it's challenging. It's so challenging. And, it takes a toll on our health. And so, that's just something that we really have to think about and we really need to tap into that.
Yeah, that's a very good perspective. One of the things that we talked about in the pre-interview was you had started to mention that it's great when people are impassioned and empathetic to what you're going through. But sometimes in that passion, when people get fired up or whatever, they're not listening enough to what is really needed. What are some of those key things that you feel are often missed in that conversation when people just get impassioned and get fired up about things?
Yeah. I always say this. Grace without accountability is dangerous. Let me repeat that again. Grace without accountability is dangerous, because if you're not holding people accountable first and atone for their action, then where does that empathy go? Because the thing is, having a gracious heart, being empathetic is so beautiful and it's so amazing. But if you don't hold people accountable first, people will play off of your grace. They will play off of your empathy. And we've given too many passes to people who have caused harm to our community. I can hold you accountable and still hold grace for you and love and empathy and compassion, because I feel like that's how we heal. I feel like that's how we can be able to have more impactful conversation.
Mhm.
That you don't get offended because I am holding you accountable. Because if I'm able to hold you accountable without you being offensive, then that's when my empathy comes in. I'm going to show you my empathy. I'm going to give you that. Because again, people sometimes can be that sponge that plays off of that not being held accountable piece. And the thing is, though, I think we as trans people, we're natural nurturers, and we're very empathetic. Our intuition is so strong and it's so heightened. But we got to understand what to do with that. We got to understand when we need to tap in. We need to understand when we feel unsafe. Like, where do we need to go? What do we need to do? And really, really just have that understanding with self. And so, I am very pro empathy. I'm very pro compassion. I'm very pro grace. I really, really am. And I'm speaking more from personal experience, because I've had to really learn this, that if I'm not holding you accountable and I'm just throwing grace at you when you've done wrong and when you've harmed, then I am missing the point.
Mhm.
Then I am contributing to part of the problem. Then I need to really take a step back and really look at what I'm trying to uh, really, really make impact on.
Mhm.
But I'll be honest with you, my love. It took several years for me to understand that. And you got to protect your energy. You got to protect your peace.
Mhm.
And so, as long as you're doing that, it shouldn't be a problem. But again, I always say, grace without accountability is dangerous.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Based on that and the previous thing that you mentioned that you quote unquote know Caitlyn Jenner. Do you have any kind of relationship with her? Is that a relationship where you have been able to talk about some accountability for some of the things that she said?
You know, me and Caitlyn have never had that conversation. And I'm the type of person, I have to sit back and observe people, because everybody's is got to be accountable for their own mouth. I am a Black trans woman who has her own life, who has her own problems, who has to go through her own obstacles and challenges. I can't babysit other people. And it's so funny, because I think this is one of the first time, and I've talked about this when it comes to Caitlyn. I haven't seen Caitlyn in about 3 years. Last time I saw her was at a Christmas party at an organization. And, Caitlyn was doing, I felt like she was doing the right thing. She was supporting community. She was doing what she needed to do. But there came this shift in her. And we've all kind of seen it played out, especially during the election time.
Yeah.
When they tried to recall Governor Newsom, and Caitlyn kind of just showed herself. But from somebody who she helped personally, I understand. I have a privilege that a lot of those other girls on the show didn't have. A lot of stuff was happening back then. It's crazy. But all I see when I see Caitlyn Jenner now is just a hurt soul. She's a very hurt woman.
Mhm.
And it shows because she's projecting it. She felt like, I know in an interview on Fox, she said something about that the trans community turned on her. And part of what it was is she couldn't take the accountability piece that was coming from trans folks, because She didn't understand that Caitlyn can get whatever she wants with the snap of a finger.
Mhm.
Somebody black like me can't. Somebody who is undocumented and trans identifying can't do that. Someone who's indigenous and trans, intersex, black, brown, can't do that. I don't think she could handle that. Do I think we should abandon her? No. But it gets very murky. And there's a lot of layers there. I don't think I need to even just jump into those layers
No.
because we preach about not leaving one trans person behind, right? We preach so much about that. Like we all want to be inclusive. We don't want to leave a trans person out. And that does include a rich white celebrity like Caitlyn. Some of the stuff that she's been saying is despicable, it's disgusting. But for me, as not only a spiritualist, but just someone who's just tapped into her higher self, I see right through it. I see right through it. You're hurt and you're projecting your hurt onto other people. But that does not mean that we have to accept your hurt. Mm-hmm. That does not mean that we have to take your hurt because guess what? We got our own stuff going on. So I think I'm going to get more into that later on this year. I feel like somehow, some way. This is probably like the first time in the first place I've ever really just talked about it because, you know, in the past I've kind of avoided conversations with Caitlyn about Caitlyn because I benefited from her. I straight up benefited. I sure did. Everybody watched me benefit from her. And so being able to, and then just imagine being in Mississippi in college, the rural South. And out of everybody, it's you that she helped. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of a crazy position to be stuck in. And, you know, the one person that actually has held out a hand to help you, and it's had a big impact. And yet it, you know, again, nobody's perfect. In every situation, there's nuance to it, and it can be problematic sometimes. Yeah, it's an interesting thing to have to navigate. I know that all trans folks at some point in their life, sorry, shifting gears kind of abruptly here, even after transition and finding themselves, do still struggle with dysphoria at times. Is there anything that you do as like a ritual or anything that helps you to find your validity in your identity as Blossom?
Yeah. There have been some points where I've still dealt with dysphoria. I felt lucky that I was able to have access to kind of align myself with that. But whenever I do feel dysphoric, I have to do things that will contribute to my self-care. And for me, it's like going on hikes, going into nature, listening to music. I love to meditate. I love to go spend time with good friends who can relate. For me, it's about finding that time to connect with yourself because you are no good to anybody else until you're good to yourself. And I've had to learn that a lot, you know, going through an activism burnout, experiencing betrayal and heartbreak, and, you know, going through what I went through. And I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I went through that because I feel like I became stronger and wiser. And, you know, when it comes to dysphoria, you know, for me, I experienced a lot of it in public spaces. Like whenever I would have to walk into certain spaces and you really didn't see trans people and you're kind of like one of the only ones, like that's kind of when my dysphoria kind of kicks in. Because usually what happens is when you're one of the only ones in certain spaces, you feel like you have to carry the entire community and the entire struggle on your back. So you have to make sure you represent well, you know what I mean? But it's a lot. And so I've learned self-coping mechanisms to kind of just help me to navigate that.
What is your favorite thing you've learned along your journey?
I've had to learn to love myself. I've had to learn to give myself grace. I've had to learn to be that empathetic, compassionate person and that compassionate soul to myself. I've had to learn that my validation should not come through other people. I should be validating myself. It's not easy because I feel like you're always going to be constantly learning this, because you could take 3 steps forward and one day fall 12 steps back. And instead of paying attention to the 3 steps you took forward, you want to focus more on the 12 back, because that was more heavy to you. And I was in a space recently and someone challenged me about the word failure, because I don't like to use the word failure. Another friend of mine taught me the word learning.
Mhm.
And he mentioned, you know, it's like when we look at success and failure, we'll spend so much time on the failure and really marinating on the failure versus the success. And then he asked me that question, why is that? And if you're not asking the why to these questions, then we're really not doing the work that we need to do to find and seek the wisdom. And so I'm having to learn to give myself more positive affirmations. I think I struggle with affirmations a little bit, which is interesting because in my line of work, my clients know this. I'm a person of affirmations, but using affirmations like in my everyday life, I don't know why I struggle with that. But I'm learning to be more affirming for myself and my purpose and just who I am, my transition. Because y'all, it just took so many years to get to this. Like for so many years, I was broken. I was depressed. I felt like I was not worthy to be here. I wasn't worthy to anybody, Like I just felt like, helpless and hopeless.
Yeah.
And I had to learn to snap out of that. But when I tell you it takes work, if you are not willing to do the work on yourself, if you're not willing to let go of the negative attitude and the negative belief about yourself, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. You have to learn to not listen to that inner critic and those voices that are stopping you from being the best person that you can be. And I'm still learning that.
Yeah.
And I'm okay to say that.
It's funny, isn't it, how you can get to be really good at kind of suppressing that inner voice, that critic, and you learn to find yourself and accept yourself, and then still feel it coming up and showing itself in other ways, and still taking over and ruling so much of your life.
Yes, exactly.
So as we wrap up this section, what advice do you have? You've given a lot of great advice, especially personal things and personal perspective. But is there any other pieces of advice that you have for young or closeted trans folks out there?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love this part. Um, you know, you come out in your time. Time is not a factor. And I think sometimes we're so pushed for time because we look around and we see people happy in their truth and we want to compare that to our own. And for a lot of us who are closeted, because again, I was very closeted for a while, it's about safety. A lot of it is dealing with safety, and focus on your safety first. Put your safety first. Is this the right time to come out? When should I come out? Those answers will lie within you when you understand when it's safe for you to come out, because a lot of us are in situations where we can't come out because we will lose housing, we would lose opportunities, we would lose things that we really really need. And so, focus on your safety, take care of yourself, love your inner self. Like, you know, take it layer by layer. You don't have to figure everything out in one setting. Layers are so beautiful. When you peel back one layer and you discover something about yourself, relish, should I say relish? Marinate in that beauty. Marinate in that beauty. You know what I mean? Whatever that looks like for you. Marinate in that, I call it abundance. Like marinate in that. Um, you know, it's like don't compare yourself. Like really don't compare yourself, and give yourself the love and the grace that you deserve. You know, Dysphoria is real. And it's okay to be navigating that. It's okay to navigate mental health issues. It's okay to navigate, the things that are challenges. It's okay. I truly believe that we have to go through these things so we can understand things a lot better in our life
Hmm.
and how we can approach things a lot better. And because, being transgender, nonconforming, non-binary, intersex, um, folks, that's even more challenging. It's even more challenging. But when we stop paying attention to the world around us and really just zoom back in on ourselves and really just learn to build that self-love, because I feel like it's something that you have to learn. You have to grow because dysphoria will actually teach you some things about yourself. Because dysphoria are things that you don't like about yourself, that you don't feel comfortable about yourself, that you feel like are stopping you, right? So when you understand your dysphoria, when you actually truly peel back that one layer and understand your dysphoria, you will begin to see yourself the way that you need to see yourself. And then you take it from there. Again, time is not a factor. The pace is not a factor. Take it little by little, brick by brick, and just continue to show yourself love, continue to show yourself respect. And if you're struggling with that, find it. What does that look like for you? And so, I would just say, keep growing, keep thriving. We all have gifts. We all have a journey. We all have purpose here. Um, and, don't let anybody stop you in your purpose. Don't let anybody stop you from doing the things that you want to do. Your transition has nothing to do with your purpose as far as people stopping you from your purpose.
Hmm.
Let me make sure I clear that up. Because your purpose is right here. What I mean is, do not let people try to make your transition an obstacle to your purpose. I think that's a better way of clearing that up. Because for me, my purpose is all of this. It's all of this. I needed to go through being closeted. I needed to go through experiencing violence. I needed to go through that so I could be where I am like today. And it's always constant hard work. So yeah, I think that's what I would say to, everyone that's really having a tough time. I would just send you love, peace, and great vibrations, and just know that you got this.
It's a lot of wonderful advice. I didn't know that you'd have so much on top of everything that you've already given tonight as far as advice and words of wisdom. So it was beautiful to see all that additional advice and perspective in that question.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
The first one, Brianna asks, "What are you thankful for?" Very interesting question.
Oh wow, I love that question. I am thankful for my journey. I'm thankful for like my friends, my family, and just the person that I am today. I'm thankful for my struggles because within struggles, I think are lessons that need to be learned. Like that's how you grow. And so, I'm just thankful for everything that has happened to me, whether it's been good, whether it's been bad, happy, sad, whatever the case may be. I just learned gratitude in that way because I know gratitude is healthy. And, when you have that wealth and that health, it really takes you far. And so, yeah, like I think that's like kind of what I'm thankful for, grateful
Yeah.
for. Not kind of, I
To be able to
am.
have those experiences, fight through them, make it through them, and have a positive outlook on it afterwards. Yeah, that is huge.
Yep,
Is that
exactly.
is that something you shared very openly and freely about the sex work aspect of your history? Is that something that you do kind of in your typical life? Are you able? Do you find you're able to kind of use that to accomplish things in conversation with people, either to lead kind of credence or in some other ways?
Yeah, for sure. Because usually I run across people who I may have had a similar experience with, and just being able to kind of give them that advice or give them, just like that little piece of information just to help them. Because I love helping people. That's just kind of like my thing. I think is a way I've been able to kind of like been able to utilize that, for sure.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Um, that was yeah. Brianna asked that question. Inashra, no, sorry. Heather asks, you you mentioned that you went to school, but what did you study? Did you go in for nursing? Were you in school the whole time for nursing?
Yeah. So I know I have to make a YouTube video about this. The answer is no. I didn't go to nursing school, and I'll explain why. Probably like on another platform. Because going back to what I was saying earlier about when we were talking about goals and how my goals shifted,
Yeah.
like that's really where it like started. So stay tuned for that because I need to really explain that. Because a little bit of that was in my documentary One Life to Blossom, which will be streaming on Reverie TV and other eight other different platforms. So catch that. Make sure you check that out as well too.
I'm sorry, I missed that. Can you say that again? The platform it's going to be on?
Yeah, so Reverie TV, Reverie, Tubi, Fire Stick, Roku are just a few of the platforms where One Life to Blossom is streaming. So check it out.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely have to look that up. Is that sorry? This is going to be tangential for the audience, but is that something that you'd be willing or able to show on this network at some point?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, we'll have to talk afterwards and get that set up. We just showed a little documentary the other day, actually on Thursday, and it really went well. It was wonderful to be
Awesome.
able to do that, and then we did a Q&A afterwards. So yeah, if you'd ever be open to something like that, I would love to have that.
For sure. Yes.
Great. Kari asks, or no, makes another comment. I'm so glad to hear you have family members that support you. It's so important to have the supportive family, especially, when you have a key person in your life that you look to and that you really kind of hope is that person. Is there anything more that you like to say about family and that level of acceptance and what it's meant for you in your journey?
Yeah, it wasn't easy because it wasn't always there.
Hmm.
Support was probably the last thing that I would get. So it took a lot of work with family, a lot of work. And so, if you're someone who's like struggling with family acceptance, just know that I hold space for anyone that's going through that because it's just not easy to navigate.
Yeah.
But being able to have family that does support, it feels different. It feels like they're your biggest cheerleader. And a lot of us as trans folk, we just need people that will support us, that will support our work, support our dreams, aspirations. And we don't always get that. And so that's why the importance of a chosen family, like what I was talking about earlier, is something that's so crucial for many of us, including myself.
Hmm.
And I'm lucky because I have the support of both now, but it wasn't always like that. I always had to lean more into my chosen family to be able to navigate. So, don't give up hope, don't lose the faith. Just keep going, keep going.
For those in our local backyard here in the LA area, what are some of the places that you've found the best, that you've been able to find the best people, the best support, the best of found family?
Oh, that's a good question. Where have I found it? Oh, well, I would say in the nonprofit sector. Believe it or not, like, I've been working in nonprofit now. It will be almost 6 years. This is probably my last year in nonprofit.
Hmm.
But when you collaborate with like other organizations, you meet new people. You meet people who are like trying to service our community, and you build friendships and you build bridges. And the nonprofit sector, it can sound one way to some people, but it's really like that close knit family that you kind of develop with like different organizations and people, and I'm so grateful for that. You know, I've made a lot of friends through that route, and I know there's like clubs and other stuff like, you know, within that. But yeah, believe it or not, it's been through like navigating other nonprofit organizations, like connecting and collaborating.
So actually, your activism is what has connected you with the most people that are your own support network now.
Yeah, and it's so funny about the word activism with me because I feel like I have to be an activist in almost everything I'm doing, even in the spiritual community, because people in the spiritual community, some transphobic people in the spiritual community will throw philosophy at you. And here's the thing about philosophy, because a lot of people don't understand philosophy, they'll kind of just take what you give them. And if you do that, because I've been in a space where somebody did that, but they couldn't tell me what a pronoun was. Now, let me be clear with you. Pronouns are the things you learn in first grade, right? People accuse of they accuse trans people of trying to project the pronoun thing, which I can't. I'm just so like, oh, but y'all learned it in first grade. How can you be spewing philosophy, right, in the spiritual community, and you're trying to say that we're trying to push pronouns on you? Like, you learned it in first grade. You know about he, she, they. You know about pronouns. That is why people who know me know that I don't entertain a lot of trans one-on-one questions for a particular reason, because people sometimes, there are people that do want to learn, yes, but there are also some people that want to use that trans one-on-one just to be dumbfound ignorant to trans people, and I'm not with it. I leave that to my trans siblings who want to teach it. I love them so much. You know what I mean? It's not me.
Yeah.
I just not me. I don't have time for it. Not the or the patience for it anymore.
Yeah, it can be tough. Always having to kind of explain yourself, especially since, like you said, you fight in every single sphere that you're in, every single section of your life. There's a fight, whether it's about the fact that you're black, the fact that you're trans, both, something else. Like, that's why it's so impressive and so beautiful that you can say yes. And I was a sex worker, and I did this, and I was trying. You know, I went through nursing, and I had these issues in college, and this, and it was these random things. It was just like Caitlyn Jenner that helped to pull me out. But I really appreciate the nuanced experience, the full depth of that, and all the different things that have made you what you are today, and keep you going through that fight. I love it.
Thank you. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Let's get back to the questions. Midvani asks, living as a trans person in a society that is constantly negating us, where do you turn to find the strength and empowerment to stay true to yourself and find self-love?
Ooh, that's a good question. I love that question. For me, starting out, it was like Laverne Cox. Because Laverne was at the time one of the only ones out there, and then Janet came along. And so, being able to see trans people on television was like my inspiration. Because once upon a time it was Ellen DeGeneres, but then it became Laverne, because Laverne was like you didn't see too many people like that. And so being able to find trans influencers or people who have impact in some way really helped me to navigate, to be quite honest, because like I try my best not to compare myself. I just wanted to listen to their inspirational message. I wanted to get something from them that I could use to make myself feel better. And so being able to find people on television or on the internet that look like me or that are doing the work like me, somebody I can find inspiration from. I've learned to kind of narrow that down a little bit, because this is also what I've discovered. Sometimes when you have that one inspirational person, and when you manifest being in the space with them, and then when you're in the space with them and they're nothing like how you want them to be, as far as like friendly, giving you that attention. I've had to learn to not have expectations. I've had to learn that because I've been in I've been in a few spaces with people who I've manifested I wanted to be in a space with. And when I finally got in that space, it was like, they were a little short. They were a little like,
Shallow.
You know what I mean? And let me tell you something. I don't play that. I'm gonna just go ahead and tell you now. I don't play that. Trust and believe. No. But I had to learn that. You know what I mean? Because people think that you're doing it for clout and stuff like that. Like, no. So find people who can inspire you, who can make you feel happy and grateful. And I think that's what will take you far. I think that's what will help you navigate. That's a very, very good question. I like that. Very good question.
Well, I love something you alluded to there in that, in manifesting yourself, meeting these people who were heroes or someone you looked up to in some way, and were hoping to get something from it, and it fell flat. Just oh God, I lost my train of thought as soon as I hit it. It was right there. Wow, my brain.
This is about being in the room with people that I manifested.
Yeah, and I think what I was sort of getting at it is, oh, there it is. Thank you.
See, that's it.
Yeah, the fact that you are looking up to these people and you meet them, and then, wow, it went away again. Oh my God, cheap wine. Genuine. I don't know what the word is. Just your true spirit and the truth about who you are comes through in those moments. I feel, so that you're there in front of a person and you just learn that they're very shallow. They don't have everything that you hoped they would be. They don't have all of the depth that probably you personally bring to that situation that you're hoping to see reflected in them, so that you can make a deep connection. It totally makes sense that you'd feel let down in some of those situations because there's so much opportunity for great connection and shared experience, and nope, it just falls flat. It's very sad.
Yeah, it's disappointing, but I've had to learn. Yeah. I've just really had to learn. Like, you know what? I'm like, okay. I think sometimes too, there's this level of intimidation when you are in those spaces with certain people, and the way you got there, they feel like they have to compare it to the way they're in there. I've also had to learn that too, because I don't have an agent nor a manager, and I still navigate certain spaces with people who have an even bigger influence than I do. And I've had to learn that a lot, but they also see I don't be caring. They also see I don't be caring. Like, but I had to learn to get to that point, y'all. Like, when I tell you I've had to learn this lesson so many times until I finally broke that karmic cycle, that I was just like, I had to realize, well, I'm deserving of being here. I'm in this space too. I'm somebody. Right?
Yeah.
So, it is just, and I hope that doesn't seem so shallow. It's just like, when you understand your self-worth and your self-esteem is in alignment, you know what I mean? It's just like, wow, and that's why for me, it's really important that I lead with love and kindness, because you never know who's watching you. You never know who you are inspiration to. And when somebody comes up to you and wants to meet you because of your work or because you've influenced or empowered them in some way, like, that's humbling.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have lost humility along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of important to know. You mentioned lowering your expectations and meeting some of these people, but there's a couple more things to that. Finding your own self-worth and realizing, I deserve to be here, and then also realizing that they are just human. They're flawed. They're not everything that you might have built up on the outside, and so I think that makes it easier to be in those spaces. And just to understand we're all just human here, and we all deserve to be here as much as anybody else. I love that
Absolutely.
you've found you've reached that level of influence where you can, be amongst those circles, because I think that's where you can make the connections that might actually help you make a difference in certain areas. Um,
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I love that.
Mimi asked the question. She's having some issues with her pup. What's the tarot card that represents good health?
That represents good health.
Hmm.
So it could be a bunch of different ones. The Empress card is a very, very good one when it comes to like nurturing and birthing something. So, health, I would say this in tarot because, I don't usually do health readings in tarot because there's an ethics thing there.
Mm,
But when we talk about the word health, because health doesn't just have to necessarily be physical, it could be mental, emotional, spiritual.
yeah.
I'm gonna say this about tarot. Don't always look at the reverse cards as a bad thing. Um, that could mean that you're coming out of something. That could mean that something was avoided, crisis averted. So, you know, there's plenty of tarot cards in there that kind of like represent health. The thing is with tarot, I will say, and I think I can say this. Um, Sometimes it's hard to if you're pulling cards for yourself, just know that you can only do so much. So it's always best for somebody to kind of like read you. I don't know if you're like doing any of that, but have a friend or something kind of like, um, do that with you. But there's plenty of those tarot cards that could actually mean like health. Um, Sometimes too, it's all about tapping into your intuition. So just remember that.
Yeah, I'd love to dive into tarot a little bit more in a moment. Well, actually, we might as well go ahead and do it now, and then I'll save this question that I had
Yeah.
for later. Um, you said that your mom did it. Did you learn a lot of it from her, or did you have to come through it from an outside place? Learn it from other people
So
and get into it.
yeah, so I actually taught myself tarot. So that was kind of like why when I came out as a tarot reader. So the way I came out as a tarot reader, there was this Facebook group where it was kind of like this kind of like it was almost like a dating kind of social group, but it was all trans and well, I think it was mostly binary trans folks, if I'm not mistaken. But what I did was I sat and I gave 14 tarot readings to 14 Black trans folks in that group. And that's kind of like how I premiered my tarot, and I premiered it during the Black Lives Matter protest. So when I came out as a tarot reader, it just shocked my mom because it's like, oh my God, like my mom did it as a kid. When I was a kid,
Oh,
like
okay.
she
Hmm.
would tell us to leave the room and she would do those readings or whatever. And so, she put the tarot cards down after a tragedy happened. So, and that was many, many years ago. And for her to see me doing it is great. I think people have different reasons and purposes for using tarot. For me, I do it in my coaching, and I do it mostly for healing and tapping into what blockages my clients kind of go through and are having. So, tarot can be used for many different things and many different reasons. But for me, I prefer to use it more for healing and understanding, and for my clients to gain clarity, the clarity that they need.
See, I don't see any other questions coming through from the audience, so I'll go ahead and jump into what I wanted to dive into a little bit. And we don't often get too much time to talk about. What has your experience been in navigating relationships as you've come to accept yourself and move through your life? What are some of the key areas of success, and what have you learned?
Yeah, lots of learning in that department. I've had to learn to love myself. You know what I mean? Like, I think sometimes going back to the word safety, we think that we can find X, Y, and Z from another person, and that the other person is going to complete us. Well, we complete ourselves. And I've had to learn this. I complete myself. My partner has to complete themselves. like, and like everybody has to complete themselves. And the thing is, you're complementing each other's completeness because you're still two individuals now in one union.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes that's why sometimes people lose themselves in the relationship if like the other person is, there's a lot going on there. And for a very long time, you know, I've had to learn to be on this journey of self love and what that looks like instead of complaining about me being single, complaining about, what I don't have. What I was doing was I was comparing a lot of what I didn't have to other people that I saw did have these things. But you got to remember, social media is a mask in itself. Like people are not always posting the bad stuff that's happening, right? So you have to remember, it's an illusion in a sense. For me, I'm on this journey of self love and self happiness. I feel like I'm going to attract the person that I need to attract whenever.
Hmm.
I'm excited. I'm ready because I know I'll be ready because I have done the work on myself and continue to do the work on myself. And it's just like, wow, I spent so many years thinking that I needed another person or another soul. And it's like, I am that soul. You know what I mean? Like a lot of us, we need to learn to be our own soulmates. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Before we attract those that we are meant to be with. And then, just thinking about the ideology of soulmates, because it's not always romantic. You can have platonic soulmates. So, just really learning to expand your mind on that. But navigating relationships, um, when I was in a relationship, it was very interesting because I had to really go through the layers. I think I can share this. I don't mind sharing this. I experienced some betrayal in one of my relationships with a friend and an ex. So after that, that really opened my eyes to how I look at relationships and what I want in a relationship. You know what I mean? What are my intentions? What does that look like? So, being able to navigate that, I think you just have to really take a look at your self worth and your self care, your self love, and see if it complements somebody else.
Hmm. As you've moved through that, as you've navigated that, and come to that level of self exploration and self acceptance, has the pool of who you're attracted to or who you're interested in changed or grown?
You want to know what's so crazy? I feel like as I've gotten older, I don't know if I'm limiting myself or I'm just kind of like over like the dating scene and stuff. Because I have weird. Now, attraction never bothered me as far as like the word attraction itself, but then I'm kind of like, hmm, I don't know. Because I'm moving more towards demisexual,
Okay.
meaning
Yeah.
like I gotta have like that spiritual connection with you or like that higher something, you know what I mean? And and I'm 35 years old, so it took me a while to get there. But I don't know. I don't want to say I'm limiting myself. I just have kind of put my guard up a little bit because it's like it's going to take a real one. I need a real one that can actually make me feel safe.
Yeah.
And I've had to learn that. And I'm okay with that. But do what works for you. Whatever works for you, honey, do what works for you.
Kari asks, at what phase of your life did you realize you were now experiencing more happiness and positive emotions than negative ones? When did that needle start to shift for
Re-
you?
I more recently, about a couple of years ago, about 2 to 3 years ago, like for such a long time, I grew up with like hardly no money. My parents did the best that they could. My parents divorced when I was 8. Um, I went through a lot, like struggles. And so I feel like within the last couple of years, things have started to shift. Um, And I'm glad that they shift, but I also am glad that I went through those struggles because I needed to. I needed to go through those things because they taught me so much. And I just feel like in more recent years, I've finally really, really just gotten a grasp on things. And it's been so beautiful.
That's wonderful to hear. And I love that, especially in conjunction with the previous question about relationships and that you've come to this place of, loving yourself, accepting yourself. And then now you're ready to attract that person that is going to, give you what you need in that level of safety. I think that's
Yes.
a beautiful place to be at. I'm excited for you. This is great. It was a little
Thank
interesting for
you.
me to learn and navigate being demisexual. I think I might have come to that realization before I started to accept my trans identity. So I was still viewing myself through that lens of, hyper masculinity and, the misogynistic societal view of what a man is supposed to be and how you're supposed to view women, relationship, sex, the whole thing. And so, yeah, it took me a minute,
Yep, exactly.
but now that I'm on the other side of it and, accepted the fact that I'm trans, it's just like demisexual, bi, pan. It's like, I don't really care what the label is. Like, I've
Hmm.
gone through so much to accept myself. It's like,
I love
whatever the
that.
label you want to throw at me, it's fine.
Yes. I love that. That is awesome. Empowerment. I love it.
Yeah, we'll have to talk afterwards and find out what area specifically you're in. I'm in Ventura County, so I'm thinking we need
Okay.
to get together and hang out sometime.
Absolutely. I would love
I still haven't met
that.
Lucky in person yet, so we should get together and do a lunch or something.
Yeah. Lucky's amazing. I love Lucky.
All right, Chat. Did you have anything else for Blossom while we have her? Um, so you know what? There is plenty we didn't talk about. You mentioned the film about you. Is that a documentary? What type of film is that?
Yeah, so it's basically so it's a documentary of my life and my experience as a Black trans person. I actually got facial feminization surgery in the documentary,
Oh,
so
wow.
you get a more of an insight of like what I went through in my raw, real, true self. Yeah, and it's interesting because we filmed that documentary during literally the most darkest period of my life, but being able to navigate through that was truly a blessing. So I encourage any and everybody to like go check it out. Support me and support my team because my team worked so hard um, at filming, and they were so patient and so kind with me because Lord knows. But yeah,
Who did you work with to put that together? Was it friends of yours, or was it I mean, I'm assuming you worked with a kind of a big production team for that.
yeah. So it was. So we ended up becoming friends. My director, me and her were actually met on set at a photo shoot. I was one of the prep heroes for the Los Angeles County Department of Public Health. And she was just all, I think she came in as like an extra or something.
Mm.
And we ended up connecting there because she wanted to interview me for a school project. And ironically, people in her class recognized me. And so we ended up just making a documentary out of it. And I love it because it's two college students. We literally filmed everything, and I loved it. It wasn't like this big production thing. It was. I just I love them so much. I
Mm.
love them so much because one of them is a dreamer who migrated here to the United States, and the other one is of Haitian descent, who is, I think she's first generation, if I'm not mistaken, but they're both so creative. They're both so amazing and powerful, and I just love them. I love them so much. I love this documentary. I'm just so grateful.
You mentioned in there that you're hoping that people will support the documentary. What are some of the key ways that people can support you? Do you have links? Is there a website for donation or something like
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah. Of course, I always say support my tarot and stuff. I have a tarot page on Instagram. Then I have my activist page on there, Blossom C. Brown and Tell All Blossom. And yeah, as I get ready to roll out other stuff coming up this year, because I've been intentional on waiting for certain things. Um, I just, keep up with me, follow me, support me, and, go with the flow. Like, I'm on TikTok. I do like astrology, tarot videos and stuff. And so it's about to get really, really lit. It's about to get really, really good. So we're going to see what happens.
Yeah, hopefully this brings a lot more recognition to you again, as far as you specifically what you're working on, and will bring people to your the various things that you're doing. I'm gonna go ahead and post I have below your video there your main account, but I didn't include the tarot account. So although
Yeah. So it's in my link. It's in my bio.
okay,
So like if you go to my main page, because I think because on my main page I'm verified on there, and like in the bio you'll see my tarot astrology page, and so that's it right over there.
great. Yeah, there's lots of links. So I've made sure to include the tell all blossom there in the chat for everybody to click over to. And Kari said, yeah, really enjoy hearing about the people that made the documentary. Sort of seems like there needs to be a separate documentary about their stories.
I know. They are such creatives. I love them. Love them.
That's awesome. All right. Well, Blossom Brown, this was wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story.